Hello there. Last week I did a video about the July full moon for 2023. And at the end of that video, I talked about where the opportunities lie. And I said that the opportunities lie in people coming forth who speak the truth. And today I want to look at one such individual, and that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He is a powerhouse, and I have a copy of his chart so that you can follow along. So one thing I want to remind everybody is that I practice Jyotish Vedic astrology, which is a sidereal form of astrology. So what that means is I look at where the planets are actually placed in the sky and not a hypothetical position. And in case you're wondering, the bird behind me there is a peacock, and peacock is the symbol or the bird for India, and Jyotish astrology comes from the East, from India. So that's why I usually have it in all my videos. And the interesting thing about it too is that Vedic astrology is a lunar-based system. We look mostly at where the moon is, as well as other planets, but instead of being a solar-based system like the Western astrologers, we are a lunar-based system. And in this painting of the peacock that I did, I do have a full moon there. And in India, instead of seeing a man in the moon, you can see a rabbit in the moon. And so I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but that's kind of indicated. So I usually have the peacock here with me in all my videos because it pays homage to where the astrology came from. Okay, so now that you've got that background, let's get started. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a very notable force, a very powerful man who speaks the truth, and somebody who actually everybody needs to take a good look at. So we have his chart, and we don't have his birth time. So what we have to do when we don't have somebody's birth time is we have to look at the chart from the moon, and that's what we're going to be doing. Like I said, Vedic astrology is a lunar-based system. So as you will notice, his moon is in Gemini, and Gemini people are extremely intelligent because it's ruled by Mercury, and it is a dual sign, so sometimes they have two lives, and you can kind of say that is the case with Robert Kennedy Jr. He kind of has had two lives. First of all, his life has not been easy. It's been very difficult. He started off, as you see, that the moon is in the nakshatra of Ardra, which means he started off in his Rahu period of time when he was born. And Rahu is a very difficult, planetary dasha to start your life off in. And at a very young age, at the age of 8, I believe, he lost his uncle. His uncle was assassinated. And then when he was 14, his father was assassinated. And that both of those deaths made a huge impact on his life. And he had a very difficult life. It was not easy for him. He suffered from some addiction issues, but at the same time, he overcame all these obstacles of losing his father, his addiction, and he also has been married 3 times, and his second wife passed away. So he has overcome all of these obstacles. And what he says is that his life has not been easy. He's seen both sides of everything, and it has made him who he is. It has made him stronger, and he is fearless in his fight for the truth, and we're going to be looking at that. So the moon is there in Ardra, and Ardra is the teardrop. So yes, he started off a very eventful life, full of sadness, losing his uncle and his father, which made a huge impact on him. But the Ardra people can have chaotic lives, but then as they move on into later on in life, things settle down and they get better. And they also want to it instills, they want to change things or fix things. That's the kind of mentality that Ardra people have. And that's definitely something that he has. And the depositor of Gemini is Mercury, and it does go to the 8th house. Now you will see it there with a stellium of other planets, all in the 8th house from the moon. So the interesting thing about all these planets being there in the 8th house from the moon that is where his father's moon was in this same location with all these other planets in the nakshatra of Uttara Ashada. And Uttara Ashada is all about truth seekers, all about justice and the American way. And the interesting thing is not only is his father, Robert Kennedy Sr.'s moon there, but the natal position of Pluto for the United States is also located there at 6 degrees. So you see all these planets are very close to that Pluto, the United States Pluto. And so both he and his father are very interested in humanity. It's in Capricorn. The 8th house is Capricorn in this chart. And Capricorn is all about humanitarianism and government and politics and the laws. But truth and justice and having a strong foundation. So they want to get to the bottom of things. They want to get to the truth of what's really going on. And that's what they're all about. The humanitarianism is very, very strong in them. And freedom. And that is what they were speaking out about. His uncle was talking about the freedom, having peace, and the corruption in the government with the deep state. And 2 days, I believe it was 2 days, anyway, it was very shortly before he was assassinated that he gave this very powerful speech about peace and how you get to peace and to stop the wars and fighting. And then the industrial complex, military complex didn't like that. And so there is controversy as to who assassinated him and then eventually assassinated Robert Kennedy Sr. And so this is something that really made an impact, obviously, on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and that is what his life is about. That's one of the purposes of his life, is to speak the truth and avenge the death of both his uncle and his father. And you can see that clearly here with all these stellium of planets being in the 8th house. So not only is his rising sign Mercury there, but the sun is there, Venus and Rahu, all in the 8th house. So that is what he is all about. So the sun represents the father, and it is there in the 8th house. In the 8th house represents death. It also represents scandals and misdeeds, and also getting to the bottom of things. You'll see a lot of therapists and people who go into companies and will save companies. You see a lot of planets in the 8th house with these people. So it means also rejuvenation. And that is what is going on. That is very much the interest of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is to rejuvenate America, to bring it back to its core of truth and justice and the American way and freedom and peace. All this that his father and his uncle were speaking about. And he does talk about how he's carrying on his family's legacy. So we have the sun, which I said represents the father, and it is there with Rahu in the 8th house of death. So that is one indicator for his father's death. Then the other indicator would be that the Saturn rules the 8th house, and it is deposited to the 5th house of politics. And so not only is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. interested in politics, but so was his father, as you can see there. And it is with Mars and Neptune. So Neptune means scandals, and Mars, Kennedy's father, was killed by a gun. Mars represents weapons. So we see that there in the 5th house. And he was a politician, and he had just given a speech, I believe, and in a restaurant, and was killed there. So we see that. But the interesting thing is that the depositor of the 5th house is Venus, and it goes to the 8th house, which again, the death with scandals around his death, but it is combust the sun. And so that means it's being burned up by the sun, so it doesn't have its full light to come to fruition. However, there is something that cancels that out, and that is the fact that Saturn and Venus exchange signs, because Saturn rules Capricorn and Venus rules Libra, where Saturn deposits to. And so they both exchange signs, which makes them very powerful. So he had a very powerful father, but it also makes Robert Kennedy Jr. very powerful too. It makes he has a very powerful Saturn, and Saturn represents the government, depositing to the fifth from the moon, politics. So this makes him a very powerful politician and one who wants to get to the bottom of things, the truth. Those two, Venus and Saturn exchanging signs, indicates all that. And then Rahu being there blows it up, exaggerates it. But it also, Rahu can also indicate scandals and things that are going on behind the scenes, big business. So you're seeing this congruence throughout Robert Kennedy Jr.'s chart. And the close tie, I think you can see the close tie that he has between his father and his uncle. They're going into politics and carrying on the family legacy, and that's what's very important to him. So we look a little bit closer at this chart, and you can see that from the moon, he has Ketu in the second house. And Ketu in the second house can give impairment to speeches. It can also mean you don't always eat the right foods or the things that are best for you. So he does have a speech impediment with his throat, and that's indicated there, and also the addiction issue, but he's able to overcome it. And because of that strong Saturn and his strong Mercury gives him discipline to overcome his addictions. And so that works out well. Also, Pluto's in the third house, as you can see there. Now, the third house is your courage as well as your communications. And Pluto is big. It is big business. It is big money. It is big corporations and big government. And so what is he speaking out about, communicating about? He's communicating about the truth behind the corporations, the truth behind the big government, what's really going on with our government agencies, and how is the government related to corporations, and how there is no separation anymore between our government and big corporations. And it's very interesting to note, though, because when I did my Vedic, for the new year of 2023, the Vedic New Year, I mentioned the Pluto return of the United States, and that we would be looking at corporations in regards to food and the medical establishment, and looking at how big corporations have made our food very toxic, and it's causing illnesses. And I think it's very interesting that that's one of the platforms or the area that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been working on and been exposing, how Monsanto has been contaminating the food that we've been eating. And when we started using their chemicals, especially when they started using the chemicals to spray the wheat that we use in our bread to keep it from molding after it had been harvested, and now all those chemicals are in our food supply. And when that started happening, that's when we started noticing the onslaught of gluten intolerance and celiacs and other health issues. And also people getting to the bottom of using the pesticides and the herbicides from the Roundup, which is also produced by Monsanto, being linked to cancers, and how that is all coming up. And he's done a lot of work in this area, and he's bringing all of this to light. So I think that that's all very interesting, because it all ties in with the Pluto return. And now that we're getting Pluto return in the United States, we are seeing this man come forth talking about these issues that are all about the Pluto return. And he has a stellium of planets there with the United States Pluto. So the sun rules his third house. It goes to the 8th house. Venus rules his 5th house and his 12th house. And so what that means is he's dealing with politics, but he also, we see this, the 12th house being activated in a lot of government and world leaders because they have to deal with foreigners and foreign affairs. And that's the 12th house. So we see that happening there again in the 8th house. And Mercury is the ruler of his chart and also his 4th house. His 4th house is your home, your homeland, your home security. So he's very concerned about that. And it's being blown up by Rahu again. So we're seeing where this man is multifaceted. So he not only knows what's going on in our government with the truth and carrying on the Kennedy legacy, but also how corporations are playing into all of this. And he wants us to get back to our fundamentals, back to the foundations that America were created on: freedom, freedom of speech, the truth, and honesty. All these things are very, very important to him. And this is a man who speaks the truth. Why? Because we look at the 2nd house, which is a speech, and then also the 9th house, which is the truth. And the 2nd house is ruled by the moon, which goes to the 1st house. And then the 1st house is ruled by Mercury, which goes to the 8th house. And the 8th house and the 9th house of truth are ruled by Saturn, going to the 5th house, exchanging with Venus, ruler of the 5th. So he is very, very interested in telling the truth, and he does tell the truth. So this is somebody to take a look at, to take very seriously. He's coming forth for the greater good. Now, the question is, will he win the election? Will he be the next president of the United States? That is a very good question. And it's a little bit too early to call it, but I will say that to me, looking at this chart, as I can see it from the moon, he is a very powerful contender. Now, I can't really call it until I actually see who else is running, and it would really help if we had an actual birth time for him. But I will say this. During the elections, Rahu is going to be in his 10th house from the moon, Ketu in the 4th house. And usually when we see, and that's where the eclipses are going to be happening, and the 10th house is Pisces, the 4th house is Virgo. And when we see the eclipse patterns and Rahu in the 10th and Ketu in the 4th going over that axis, it usually brings a lot of opportunities in someone's career because the 10th house is the house of career. And Jupiter rules his 10th house of career, and it also rules his 7th house of business partners. And it deposits to the 12th house from the moon of foreign affairs. And Jupiter, he's going to, at the time of the elections, he is going to be getting his Jupiter return. And as you can see, Jupiter there in Taurus, it is retrograde, and that's in his 12th house. It's retrograde. And what we find that when people have Jupiter retrograde in their charts is that they're very interested in fixing things, in turning things around, things that are broken, turning them around. So he's got that there in the 12th house, our foreign affairs. He wants to turn that around. And then all those planets in the 8th house that I was talking about, which is also a house of rejuvenation and turning things around. And Venus, the ruler of the 12th, deposits to the 8th house. So this could be, and also at the time of the election, Venus is going to be in his 6th house, and he's going to be running the planetary period, as far as we can tell with the moon here, of Venus Rahu. So Venus is the ruler of his 5th and the 12th house, depositing to the 8th house from the moon, ruled by Saturn, in a very strong exchange. Venus and Saturn, very strong exchange. Saturn being the government, Saturn being in the fifth with politicians, and it's with Mars, which means he does not give up. He keeps going. So we see that. And Venus being in the sixth, the house of service, at the time of the election, aspecting, that is Scorpio, he'll be aspecting his Jupiter return. Uranus will also be there, which Uranus brings sudden awakenings and changes. It's, to me, it's looking pretty darn good. And he's running the dasha of Venus Rahu. And again, Rahu's going to be in his 10th house from the moon. So I think that there's a very good chance he could. There is a very good chance he could be. But I'm not going to call it yet because, like I said, I have to look at the people who, I have to look at his running mate and also the people who are going to be running against him, all of their charts, to be able to make a better determination. But anyway, even if he doesn't win, he's going to bring a lot of the truth to the American people that the American people are craving, that they want to see. They want to see stability. They want to see truth. They are tired of this chaos that's been going on, this helter-skelter, people getting away, especially government officials, but not even government officials, criminals getting away with no justice. They are tired of it. They want justice. They want accountability. They want America to be free. They want us to be able to speak our language, to be uncensored. They want our freedoms. They want prosperity. They want a good economy. And they want us to succeed. And I believe that that is what this man is all about. And he's bringing the truth, and he's bringing an awareness to everything and to the deep state. And he wants to dismantle it. And so God bless him. We need more like him. That's all I can say. So anyway, there you have it. So be sure to subscribe to my channel and click all notifications so you don't miss any of my videos. And check me out at my website, www.michellebond007.com. And when you're there, be sure to sign up for my free newsletter so you'll always be informed. And to see how these planetary energies can unfold in your life and give you the roadmap so that you can make your life work for you, not to you, book an appointment and have a reading. Again, www.michellebond007.com. Be inspired, be empowered, and I will see you next time.